streaming on YouTube, Brent.
Okay, great. Okay, good evening. I'm going to take it on faith that folks are seeing us on the Ballard District Council YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us. My name is Brent Lackey. I'm this year's president of the Ballard District Council. I'm also the president of the Whittier Heights Community Council. And as I usually remind folks at these meetings, but I haven't done so online in a little while, Whittier Heights, that's between 8th and 15th and 65th and 85th, just north of Ballard High School. Tonight, we're delighted to have a large panel of folks to talk about some important utility projects that are happening in Ballard. And that's going to focus mostly on the heart of Ballard with regard to the largest ever, as I understand it, capital project that the city of Seattle and Seattle Public Utilities has ever tackled with the Ship Canal Water Quality Project. A handful of folks are going to talk about the details of the project itself, the goals, what the facilities are, kind of the scope of that effort, and then we're also going to sort of finish off with a fairly robust focus on the public art elements of that project, which are really cool, if I may say so myself, and I think are going to be a really nice addition to what happens in Ballard down the line in the future when the project kind of wraps up. And then we're also going to be having a conversation about some of the use of the space right there at the Ballard part of that project. Dave Boyd, representing a group of the Friends of Waterfront Parks in Ballard, I believe is the group's nascent name, going to talk to us about some of their efforts. And then we'll finish it off with presentation and some comments from folks from Seattle City Light about bus and transportation electrification project work going on in the city of Seattle and in Ballard. Before we get going, I just want to kind of note a few things at the outset. One is we're broadcasting this to our YouTube channel, but folks watching on YouTube don't necessarily have a way to be on the Zoom call with us. Want to apologize for that. We haven't really got the technical means to sort of have the community meeting collectively just yet. So we've been doing more of kind of a bit more of a one-way, less iterative kind of presentation approach than we might really prefer in the COVID times. But thankfully, we're already on our third online meeting and are at least trying to reach out and continue to support the communities in Ballard with information that's salient and resonant to folks going on right now, be they things coming from the city or things coming from the private side, like our focus last month on development on Market Street, for example. So doing a lot of different things to really try and help communities, nonprofits, organizations, business, everybody in Ballard stay connected in Greater Ballard, Crown Hill. Also kind of want to talk, well, I mentioned the word resonance, I guess it's obviously been, and I guess it's probably fair to say, an incredible, I don't know, maybe outlandish, certainly a really hectic week in city politics, especially as regards public safety and the Seattle Police Department. I have personally received, and I know others on the Ballard District Council Executive Committee have received a lot of email wondering, you know, where we're at on a lot of these police and police budgeting issues and public safety concerns. I have heard a lot, and I share the concern of a lot of folks in Ballard about the state of the Ballard Commons Park and the sort of public safety problems that we're having kind of all throughout Ballard. We're not presenting information about two big city projects in the utility side of the city tonight in an effort to avoid any of those topics. We certainly think it's really, I guess to use my word again, salient and important that some of these things get discussed in the community forum. But I also think we're not at a point where we were quite ready to try and tackle that topic. And it's sort of made obvious, I think, by the way things have gone this week, that that things are still in enough flux that I don't know that we could contribute much more than some noise to the kind of issue right now anyway. But that is not to say that we aren't talking very actively about trying to delve into some more of the public safety and police issues, especially as regards Ballard and public safety kind of coming up later this year. So I just wanted to mention that lest others think we're just not really even kind of confronting the elephant, if you will. But I am really excited about what we have tonight. I think it's going to be very interesting. I know that as regards how things are going to take shape and change in a lot of ways in Ballard and in downtown Ballard, especially down on Salmon Bay Way, there's a lot going on and a lot more going to keep going on for the next several years. So with that, I'm going to kind of hasten to hand it off to the folks from Seattle Public Utilities. I'm going to start with you, Kelsey Hinsberger, project manager for part of the project. And I'm going to let you really do the lion's share of introduction of your team and presenting the information. Thanks for being with us.
That sounds great. I am just pulling up our PowerPoint. Can you guys give me a thumbs up? Can you see my screen? Maybe. Okay, awesome. So I'm here today. I'm Kelsey Hinsberger. I am the pump station project manager for the Ship Canal. I'm joined by Stephanie Secord, our storage tunnel project manager, Jason Huff, our arts project manager, and then Jeffrey Verigi, our artist at the Ballard site. So I'm actually going to kick it to Stephanie to kick us off and take us through some of the opening material.
Thanks, Kelsey. Can you hear me?
Pretty well. Yeah.
Okay, good. So my goal on the first part of the presentation is to give an update on the storage tunnel construction project that's going on now at the Ballard site at Shulshul and 24th, and also in the area East Ballard between the Fred Meyer and the post office. So that's our main focus for the construction portion. But before that, I wanted to give kind of an overcap of what the purpose of the project is and what issue we're trying to solve. So you can go to the next slide, please. So this is a schematic showing the current situation we have, where normally in dry weather, we have a combined system, and without the rain, with the sewage just flows through the combined system and gets pumped to the treatment plant. But the situation is in heavy rains, we get a lot of storm water and it picks up the sewage. And when the treatment plant can't handle the amount of flows, we do get overflows into the Ship Canal. So that's the situation we're trying to remedy. Next slide, please. And so when the storage tunnel is complete and the whole storage tunnel program is operational, this is the way it will operate, where when we do have an overflow, it'll flow into the tunnel, which is the added circle at the bottom. And then when the treatment plant can handle the flows, we will be pumping the flows out of the tunnel to the treatment plant. There is still the ability to overflow, but that'll be limited by the size of the tunnel. Okay, next slide. So this is where we're, the basis of the program is what we're trying to remedy is we'll be keeping more than 75 million gallons of polluted stormwater and sewage on average each year from flowing into the Ship Canal waters. And it is we are under consent decree with the Department of Justice, the US EPA, and the Department of Ecology. And this is a combined project with King County. The green shows the King County basins, and the pink shows the SBU basins. But it's we have it divided where the city of Seattle has 5 of the outfalls and King County has 2. So the cost split is a 65-35 split between Seattle and King County. Next slide. So this slide shows the alignment of the tunnel, which is the long thin line from Ballard to Wallingford. The tunnel, so the Ballard site is the hub where we will launch the tunneling machine from the Ballard site, and it'll be tunneled to the east, passing through the shaft that will be built at East Ballard site, the Fremont site, and ending at the Wallingford site. And then we have 2 future projects to bring flows to the Wallingford site and to the Ballard site. Those are conveyance projects. Also part of the tunneling project is we include the Queen Anne site, and we will have another conveyance pipe that will bring flows from the Queen Anne site under the ship canal to the tunnel at the Fremont site. So this is the Ballard. The Ballard site is kind of the hub of a lot of projects. We have the initial project back, what we just finished last year was the Ballard Early Works project that prepared the site for the tunneling project to come next. And so currently what you see out there is the tunnel project, and we're building the tunnel, and in the future it'll be the pump station site as well. And then the third project is the Ballard Conveyance Project, where it's bringing flows from the pipes to the tunnel through Ballard. And then finally in 2024, when we complete all the projects, we'll be restoring 24th Avenue Northwest. So right now, well, so these slides are trying to give an overview of what you see maybe from over the fence. The picture on the left is an aerial view of the launch shaft where we're building we are building this launch shaft. The first task we have to do is build a slurry wall, which is a very deep, what we call a cutoff wall. So the idea is that it's ultimately going to cut off the groundwater flow into the inside of the tunnel so that we can excavate out and have a dry excavation. The machines that you'll see several cranes in the left picture. One is to pick up the rebar cages that you see in the center picture, but the other two are to dig a series of segments. There's 18 different segments, and we do one at a time, staggered them, and each segment excavation is 200 feet deep, and then we fill the segment with slurry, and then we drop in the rebar cage, and then the last task is, you'll see on the right, the series of concrete trucks. On a day where we're pouring a panel this size, there might be 80 trucks coming in, and they back up 3 at a time. And then we pump the concrete down to the bottom, and it displaces the slurry to come out. But the slurry is what kind of holds the walls of the excavation in place so that it doesn't cave in. And then on the very left-hand side, the series of the tanks that you see there is kind of the processing plant for the slurry. So the idea is to replace the slurry with the concrete mix and the rebar. And so the next slide kind of shows the outer ring. This is the section view of looking down at the slurry walls. And so the yellow are the primary walls, and we've completely poured those out. And of the blue ones, we've about 3 done, and so there's about 6 left that we have to do, and we'll complete that in early September. But again, these panels are going down 200 feet deep, and then in the end, when the slurry wall is complete, the contractor will then come back in and excavate out the center, and they'll only excavate out to about 100 feet down, and then they'll start building the actual shaft inside this slurry wall. So that's kind of the main thing that's happening out there right now. And again, we'll be done with this task in early September, and soon after that, we'll be starting the excavation later this year. And then this is the East Ballard site, which is between 9th and 11th on Northwest 45th Street or Avenue, and between the Fred Meyer and the post office. And again, we're starting here just now. We've rerouted the Burt Gilman Trail to the north side of Northwest 45th Street. And now we're setting up the next slide will show we're setting up our equipment for the jet grouting, and we'll be injecting grout into the ground. And the purpose of that is to create a solid ground and to manage the stormwater or the groundwater. So when the tunnel comes through this area, we have to stop the tunneling machine and do some maintenance on it. And this provides more stable ground for that task. And at the same time, we have to build a horizontal, what we call an adit, from the shaft that will be built at this location over to the tunnel. And that's work that's done, at 50 feet below grade as well. So the jet grouting is to create some stable ground for that type of work. And again, that's starting now at that area, and it'll continue on for into December. So that's, I think that's the end of the update. Yeah, now I'll transfer it back over to Kelsey.
Thank you. So now I'm going to kind of zoom in on the Ballard site and 24th Avenue Northwest. I tend to think of this site as kind of broken up into sections. So the pump station area is this area shown in orange. It'll be the home permanently of the of SPU's Ballard pump station. We call it the tunnel effluent pump station since it'll be at the end of the tunnel. And then the other area that's part of this construction contract is the restoration of 24th Avenue and the 24th Avenue street end. So I'll in a couple of slides show you kind of our current concept for the restoration and the street end. And then you'll also kind of hear me sometimes refer to the southern half of the site or the Ballard site. That's really referring to this area in green surrounding the Yankee Diner building and closer to the waterfront. That area is currently kind of outside of the scope of the Ship Canal water quality project. We're not really touching anything, building anything there. But we are trying to design the pump station and the street end restoration in a way that doesn't preclude any future work that SPU may want to do on that southern half of the site, and also the area kind of right in between where the pump station will go and 24th Avenue. So I'll show you some plans that show that a little bit in more detail. This is a rendering of our current design concept. You'll see this cylinder right in the middle of the site is what we're calling the tower. It's really meant to, first of all, convey that underground shape of the below grade shaft that Stephanie showed you. So the big idea was really to communicate that same form above ground. And then it's clad in a metal facade to kind of evoke a sense of the maritime and industrial nature of the area. It also includes some programmable LED lights that hopefully we'll be able to program to either convey something about the operation of the pump station or the connection to the weather. We're still kind of mulling over different ideas there. This area will be fenced just so that, mainly so that our we can secure our assets and so that our O&M folks and staff can access this area securely in the event of an emergency or in the event that they're responding to some sort of weather event. And then along 24th Avenue, we'll be putting in parking along the east side of the site, or along the east side of 24th, along with an expanded pedestrian walkway to connect people down to the water. One of our big design concepts was to really be able to encourage people to bring them down to the water via a safe pedestrian pathway so that they could enjoy the newly rebuilt 24th Avenue Pier down here. So just a little bit more detail on that pump station concept right now. Here you can see these programmable LEDs, and we're again hoping to be able to illuminate the pump station. And then details on the 24th Avenue right-of-way. We'll also be putting in some green stormwater infrastructure elements along the pedestrian pathway to both be functional and treat our stormwater runoff from both the site and the right-of-way, but also to be educational, to inform people about the connection between the weather and the people in Ballard and our infrastructure that surrounds us. And then the street end concept, this is really the outcome of our December public survey. We had 4 options, and I think the feedback we got that most people responded was that most people responded best to a more flowy and kind of natural looking street end. So we arrived at a concept that does incorporate kind of more curved lines, some more natural features. We have a hand carry small craft launch area over on the east side of the pier, and then an accessible ramp for folks to access the water on the west side of the pier. We're also creating a little more expanded seating and active use area over on the east side of the street end to again, hopefully activate the area. And I think that is all I have for pump station. So I'm going to pass it over to Jason now to give us an update on the programmatic art.
Unmute myself.
Muted. There you
go. Yeah, well, thank you all for having us here today. My name is Jason Huff. I'm the acting director of the public art program for the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture. And I'm joined here today by Jeffrey Vergay and Vaughn Bell. I just want to talk about just the artwork that's at the Ballard pump station, but also, a little bit beyond that, because I think a lot of what we're working on with SPU and the Ship Canal water quality projects are all, are part of a bigger program that we sort of put together with Vaughn. A couple of years ago, she was hired as a artist in residence, and she look at SPU's drainage and wastewater management plan, and to kind of develop an art plan that would kind of sync with SPU's plan and sort of guide our office and SPU for the next, maybe 10 more years on public art projects. A lot through the Ship Canal area, but also throughout Seattle, where SPU is also, doing other drainage and wastewater work. And so she spent about a year working with SPU program managers, project managers, engineers, fisheries folks, and just kind of really took in a lot of information and developed a plan that, again, was able to find ways in which we could have artists work with SPU to kind of help tell the story and to really, raise awareness and, of the stewardship that the utility is working on, but also to, get people engaged as well as part of it, because, part of like with SPU's plan is that, SPU can only do so much, and a lot really rests on the people who live in Seattle. And so the art plan really kind of raises that awareness for folks so that they kind of understand how their property, their street affects all the waterways throughout the area. And so, she, at the end of her residency, she developed a plan that, that we're now implementing through all different projects. The next slide, please. But I think, to focus sort of here, and again, I want to kind of speak more about the whole Ship Canal projects is, we have focused on 4 project areas from number 1, which is the Ballard site, but also 2, the East Ballard site by the Fred Meyer. There's another site, number 3 in Fremont, and then 4, which is the West Shaft site in Wallingford. And so for those 4 sites, we have been able to, we developed 3 permanent projects, which are happening in Ballard, Fremont, and Wallingford. And then also at each of the 4 sites, we also developed a series of temporary artwork projects that are gonna be part of the construction, and we've already started getting those implemented. And by next week, we'll have all 4 sites. We'll have artworks at those. Next slide, please. So, you know, the goals for the public art was, again, like I mentioned earlier, is to increase public awareness, make these invisible systems visible, connect people with the flow of water, you know, really just really ask big questions about, you know, how we how are we connected with the water? And, you know, really looking at public art and really having a public, public face, and really kind of making sure that, you know, we're part of, as far as artwork, are remaining contemporary and with a lot of themes, but also, you know, really putting a lot of equity in the work of really looking at, you know, systemic racism and how we can correct a lot of, the wrongs that have been, we've been part of the status quo over the number of decades and centuries. So, you know, we've been really trying to work on that. And I think specifically with the Ballard site, given the proximity of where the Shilshole village was, we felt that the Ballard site, you know, it would be a good opportunity for the city to honor that history and that culture. And so, you know, we wanted an artwork that specifically spoke to Coast Salish history and culture. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have a number of temporary artworks that are going on in the 4 construction sites, and we're calling it the whole series Flow. And so the series will have artists who are installing temporary works at the construction sites for 6-month cycles. And so, as mentioned, we just have 3 up right now, and the last one is going up next week at Fremont. So we have Kaylee Nelson and Crystal Christopherson at in the Wallingford site with their artwork MMIW, which is for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Sort of taking on 2 topics here. One of looking at environmental stewardship, but also looking at, you know, the issue of, you know, Native women who, you know, these crimes are going unanswered. So that's up right now at Wallingford. I encourage you all to go by and see that one. Min Carrico will have a piece, Tatarat Tat, was going next week. Katie Miller has her piece, Crossing, at the East Ballard site over by the Fred Meyer. So along that gate, it's a number of little Tyvek boats that are folded and incorporated into the chain link fencing. And then also here at the Ballard site, Angie Youssef Hinojos and Carlos Jimenez created Chak, which is the Maya god of rain. And so, I mean, obviously connecting with the theme of environmental stewardship with SPU, you know, they have sort of like a frieze of, I think 3 panels, 3 or 4 panels that are on the wall by the entry gate by the site along Shilshole Avenue. Right, next slide. And then the permanent artworks, we have for the Wallingford site, Ryan Fedderson, who is creating the artwork Overflow, which is sort of this fence that she's creating. And a lot of the imagery that she developed for this came from a lot of her interactions with community groups through a number of festivals like the Fremont Fair, the Ballard Seafood Fest, of just meeting with folks and finding out how they, you know, what are ways in which they use water. And so you can see like people brushing their teeth, you know, there's a toilet flow. So it's a number of different ways that she's sort of incorporating into this fence and sort of these raindrops. And then Preston Singletary and David Franklin are creating two artworks because the Fremont site is also Queen Anne. So on opposite ends of the ship canal, they're going to have these canoe paddles, which is petrol guards the water and Raven steals the water. So giving this, you know, this folklore of how, you know, water, how Raven stole water from petrol to create, you know, the water throughout the northwest of Salish Sea. And so I think one of the things I think also looking at equity of how it turned out, which I think is pretty remarkable and really something that we're proud of at the city, is that, you know, along with the work that Marvin Oliver did with Groundswell Northwest. With David was managing that project. We worked together on that. All 4 sites, the Wallingford, Fremont, Ballard, all have native artists who are working on these projects. So we'll have 4 native artworks along the ship canal. So we're really proud that we're able to honor the history and the culture of the Northwest. Next slide, please. At the site, we have Christian French has an artwork that's embedded into the pier called Sing Calypso. Sort of, he created a poem and sort of this little story about a fisherman who saves a fish, and then so the fish again sort of returns a favor by saving the fisherman's life when he falls into the sea. And sort of, as on the left there is the Calypso, which was built right over there, and that site was sort of incorporated that, sort of a nod to the Northwest maritime history. Next slide, please. So here we get more of a detailed photo of Chuck that's at the Ballard site. And then also part of these artworks here is Vaughn Bell, who is the lead artist for the Ship Canal projects. She is working on a project called Connective Thread, which sort of acts as a way to sort of tie in all these 3 or 4 project sites together along. So, because we're thinking of this, all of these projects as one big program, and we're encouraging people to walk and bike along the Burke Gilman Trail to see all the artworks, from today with Flo, and then in a number of years, all the permanent artwork. So Vaughn is here, and so she can give a few points about the Connective Thread project.
Hi, thanks, Jason. Yes, great to see all the images of all the artwork. The idea of the Connective Thread artwork is that to create a little bit of a through line to all of these pieces, and also to connect the idea of the macro scale, which is the Salish Sea, the big watershed that we're all part of, to the micro scale of the sidewalk when you walk on it. So the final product of this artwork will be a series of inlays in sidewalks. There will be some sidewalks being reconstructed at each of these 4 locations. And there are some locations where the sidewalk inlays will actually be created by the artists who are creating the permanent artwork. So for example, Jeffrey, who you're going to hear from tonight, will be making some that are nearby his piece. And then some that are in between. I'm designing artworks that are referencing different species and ecosystems within the Salish Sea. So the idea of connecting the fact that when you walk on the sidewalk, the water that flows there is eventually ending up in the habitat for all these different creatures. So it's a long-term project, and it's a very interesting thing to learn about and work on. So yeah, thank you.
You also want to mention, Vaughn, about this the Ballard conveyance locations as well?
Yes, that's right. So the various sites that Kelsey and Stephanie shared, there's will be these inlays at all the places we are building sidewalks. So that includes the 4 sites where there's permanent artwork, and then the Ballard conveyance and the Wallingford conveyance. So in total, I think we'll have 12 to 15 different inlays. And I'm looking at this image that you see here is showing how it won't look exactly like this, but I'm thinking about the way that infrastructure can that becomes very ordinary, and we see it all the time, how to transform that into something that's different and that makes us think about our surroundings. So that's going to be part of the aesthetic of these pieces when they're finished. All right, thanks.
And then now we have Jeffrey Vergay, who can talk about his artwork proposal at the Ballard site. And we're still in the design phase, and so Jeffrey is still, this what you're going to see was his concept proposal, and so he's been working with our office and with SPU just to kind of work on a few details that he's making some changes, but at least you'll get to see what his concept is for the project.
Thank you, council members, for your time. Thank you, Jason. My name is Jeffrey Verge. I'm a member of the Port Gamble S'Klallam tribe. I'm also a Suquamish and Duwamish descent. So it's a great honor for me to be here tonight and to share my work for this project. What you're about to see is my sculptural piece that I'll be creating for the site. I call it Octopus Woman. And the idea and the design is, after doing much history, doing the research of the area, taking in consideration both the native ancestry that resides there, and as well as the fishermen and boat history, I wanted to create something that would speak to all peoples. And so I thought the idea of a ship prow, the masthead that would be able to capture my art design, as well as be a great representation of the area itself. The octopus woman, she's an important part. Octopus is an important part of the diet of Salish people. My own family eats it. I've tried it. I'm not a big fan, but it's underutilized motif. Well, it was when I started doing this. Now with Kraken, we're going to see a few more, probably a few more octopus. The height right now we're looking at would be 24 feet tall. Materials would be mixed of cedar and yellow and white bronze. It would be a clean emphasis, really clean. So she's blessing the water is what you're seeing there going down. The idea why I went with the octopus is she's one of the most intelligent creatures in the world. We have the largest ones here in the Puget Sound. She's one of the best mothers ever. She sacrifices herself, her own health, to ensure that her children live, which is why the idea of what she represents is so important, because of the play of manning all our resources and using them properly to make sure that our environment is better than it was when we were growing up, and it is now. The idea of the ship prow came as a result of many conversations, but I think one of the biggest aspects for me was that knowing that Jacques Cousteau's Calypso was built right next to the yards there. And as a child, I'm a huge Jacques Cousteau fan, and he was my first exposure to conservationism. And so it's fitting that, to me, a ship prow would represent the area. Again, more of a look. Now, this design is in the concept phase. We've gone through a couple stages already. It's going to be much more dynamic. There will be more interaction on the backside with her legs wrapping around the pole and working out some problems just to add some more bulk to the overall piece. What I want to do is create something that looks old and new, that you can't really put a finger on. It has an Art Deco feel for it, as well as the native elements that are from this region here. And here you're looking at what it could look like, this version, what it would look like with the current design of the tower. She does come off as like a bow, a ship's prow.
Well, I think
if you hear anything, I apologize. If you hear anything loud here, my wife's in there watching the Mariners, so you might hear some loud cheering, or worse, if things aren't going so well. But thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Jeffrey, appreciate that, and encourage you not to worry that we are a lot of Mariner fans in Ballard, but we've been cursing so long at that team that we've kind of given it up, actually. But hopefully our winning ways will someday resume. I have a bunch of questions from varying folks in the audience. I'm going to try and give voice to them as quickly as possible. We only have about 8 or 9 minutes here on the agenda, but we'll try and get to it. And, I apologize if it feels a little broken up. We wanted to go through the whole presentation with both the engineering and functional facility side, and then the arts piece before we got into some Q&A. So it'll kind of be a little broken into things about each of those in order. But kind of going to the facility part, there was some interest in kind of what's really happening with the East Ballard site in it of the project. Specifically, some folks wanted to know what's happening with, apparently there were a lot of ecology blocks placed around the postal annex, and they were wondering if that was related to this work or if that was something that that SDOT or someone else had done to kind of prevent a certain amount of RV camping and a lot of on-street encampment that was happening. Kind of wondering to understand whether that was what the relationship was between your East Ballard site and some of that stuff down there. And then also wondering what might be the impacts of noise impacts or otherwise impacts of some of the jet grouting that are going on down there.
Okay, hi, this is Stephanie.
Hi, Steph.
Hi. So the ecology blocks are we talking, there are some within our fenced area? Are those the ones in question? The ones inside our fenced area are to create a pond for managing the jet grout, the waters that are part of the jet grouting operation. So I don't know if there's other ecology blocks that are elsewhere.
Yeah, it might be elsewhere. I'm sorry, I couldn't be a little more specific about what that question really.
If you go to the
referred
next picture, I think it might show some of the ecology blocks. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So where the black plastic is draped over, that's just to create a pond. That's a pond. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you. The next question was about parking at the primary Ballard site. Kelsey, do we call it the Ballard site? What do you call the main site?
You can call it the Ballard site. I think
Okay,
that's.
because you said you really refer only that one part of it as the Ballard site. So.
Oh.
I just want to get the nomenclature right, but folks are wondering just more about what's happening there with parking, with access to the water, with there's a certain amount of interest and concern about there only being sort of 50, 60 feet wide sort of shoreline access where the site itself looks to be hundreds of feet wide, and why isn't there more? Can you just sort of address some of the park-like function there?
Sure. I guess maybe this view would be better. To the first part of the question about parking, since really the parking that we're providing is going to be, so the public parking that we're providing is going to be mainly along the east side of the right-of-way. And then on site, we'll have parking for SPU vehicles, but since that area is secured, that's not going to be public parking. And then in terms of what we're providing for shoreline access, it's really what's shown in the rendering. This area is the area of public right-of-way, so that's why that's really where we're prioritizing public use and public space on the project. But I think part of the question was, why isn't the project doing any shoreline access kind of on site? And if I go back, we actually don't own the area directly adjacent to the water on the private parcel area. And so I don't think there really is much opportunity for at least for SPU's parcel there to be a shoreline use.
I see.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that
Okay.
gets to it for sure. Is the three colored areas then that you're showing on the slide, is that all of the city's ownership?
The pump station and the southern part, this green,
right.
the orange and the green are the SPU owned private parcel.
Right, and the blue is ostensibly street right away, right?
Right of way, yep.
Yeah. Mhm. Okay, and then just so folks can kind of understand, I didn't totally understand, is the long-term disposition to have the whole pump station fenced off from the public? What's the plan for sort of access? It seems like there's a chain link fence just kind of around that one part. Is this true to the rendering that there's going to be vegetation kind of where we see it, or is that still just all very conceptual? What's happening with all the vegetation?
Yeah, you are right. There's going to be a fence surrounding what we really like the kind of operational yard area of SPU's parcel. And again, a big reason for that is just that so that the area is secure in the event that O&M staff need to get in there and they need to have access potentially 24 hours to be able to operate our equipment. There is a large area of landscaping within the fenced area. And really SPU is doing some long-term planning for the use of the long-term use past when Ship Canal is done on the site for a potential future project that might include, I'm going to go back to this other slide, that might include basically the southern part of the site, the green area, and basically this kind of swath. I hope you can maybe see my cursor.
Yes.
Along the west edge of the site. So that really is the reason that there's landscaping here and that it's fenced, is that SPU is kind of reserving that space for a potential future project. But we don't yet know what that is, and it's well outside of the Ship Canal timeline and scope. In fact, we have really SPU said they're not going to put any resources towards planning for that future use, future project for another 2 years at this point.
Why?
Mainly due to resources. There's no resources for staff or a project there. And in the current financial climate, we're delaying it for a couple of years.
I see. Well, we'll just count on you to keep closely coordinated with us and others in Ballard then as that moves forward, because obviously we have a keen interest on anything that's publicly accessible down here. And also just a real, I think, keen concern about how the site here is going to interface with a lot of the encampment issues that are already really present and abundant there at that location.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of running down and out of time. Let me make sure I've tried to capture any last questions. There were a couple of things about the artwork that I wanted to express and not leave out. People are wondering, and I would think this is a great question, are people going to be able to walk right up to the octopus woman? You kind of see on this, I think on this slide you're on now, kind of where we are on the sculpture, but if you could talk to kind of that issue, people think that it's a really beautiful theme, a lot of positive feedback, Jeffrey, about the piece and the concept and the ideas behind it. Some folks wanted to hear a little more about any other art or any other large scale installations that Jeffrey may have done that they could look at. And yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we are looking at different ways to do it to make it much more so people can walk up closer. So which is why we're going to have to make some adjustments to the design. If you want to see some of my artwork right now, you could go to Citizen M Hotel in Lake Union. They have one of my murals there. Snoqualmie Casino I designed their VIP entrance mural. It's completely wraparound. I'm working right now on a mural for the new Climate Pledge Arena for the Kraken. And then where else you can see, you go to Auburn to the Muckleshoot Tribe. I designed the artwork and the water sculpture there for their Veterans Park. There's also plenty of places online. The Smithsonian is another place.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Excellent answer. We're basically out of time. I don't think we could finish answering all the questions that come up just from this short 45-minute presentation, even if we use the remainder of our 45 minutes. A great introduction to the project from you folks, I think, and I think it just evidences that we're going to need to kind of try to make sure we stay in touch and have you back with certain different elements and moving forward as we go. We didn't really get into impacts that are going to come regarding traffic, some of the major development that's going on right above your site there on Market Street. There's literally hundreds of units of residential housing going to be built over the next couple of years right there. So I think we definitely want to sort of follow up with another effort and crack at this, but it's been a really great introduction to the overall thing. And I think it also is super for community of Ballard to get to have a look at this really fun and new and both ancient and new piece of artwork that we're getting. So we look forward to that. Any last comments from you folks?
Just appreciate the time. Also, anybody wants to see, I have a lot of comic book work out there if they want to take a look at that and see samples of what I do.
Excellent, thanks. Well, we'll try and post some links to some of your stuff, Jeffrey, so people can follow up on our web stuff.
And if people want to ask me questions, they can tweet at me on Twitter. I'd be glad to answer any questions there too. Excellent.
And I guess I'll just finally note that there's loads of information, of course, about the city's Ship Canal Water Quality Project on their web stuff too. So we'll link to some of that, but you can certainly find that on your own really very easily. Without further ado, I want to kind of hop through the agenda. I'm already running about 3 minutes late and I'm kind of a whip cracker on the agenda. Going to jump over now to Dave Boyd. Dave's been a long time participant in lots of land use planning and parks and open space, community activism in Ballard and in the city of Seattle, and is going to talk a little bit on behalf of a nascent group of folks who are calling themselves Friends of Ballard, Downtown Ballard Waterfront Park, I believe. Dave, I'm looking for you on the Zoom call here.
I'm here. It won't let me start my video, but because it says you stopped it. But
oh, I didn't mean to stop
okay.
it. Let me see if I can turn it on for you.
Let me. No, that's not what I want.
It says you're screen sharing now.
Yeah, and I clicked on the wrong thing.
That's okay.
Bear with me just a second here. So you're right. We are a very informal, loosely organized group at this point, and we are very thankful that you gave us this opportunity to share some thoughts that we're developing. And this is all very early draft work. We've been kind of meeting for the last, we started meeting before the pandemic, and we did participate in SBU's open houses and have also participated in Design Commission and Parks Board meeting to discuss what we see as a really a once in a lifetime opportunity for Ballard. The group consists of, I'm active in Groundswell Northwest. There's also representatives of the Central Ballard residents, Stimson Marina, Friends of Street Ends. So it's, and we're certainly interested in getting other input as we move along.
Excellent. So Dave, I'm seeing a screen on the share that looks like your Microsoft snipping tool. Wanting to know if you want to save changes. So we're not seeing your final picture or presentation.
Okay, now it tells me the screen sharing has stopped. Let me try one more. Is that better?
Not seeing anything just yet. No.
Okay, try again.
I think it kind of depends on which screen you're actually showing, perhaps.
Let me escape from this one. I was going to ask in our pre-session whether you wanted me to give this a trial run, but and I probably should have. Bear with me.
Not a problem.
Try one more time here.
There's your Zoom window. So we're
Yeah,
seeing your web browser.
you don't want to see my email. No.
Hey, Dave, I've also got it pulled up. I could probably share it if you want.
There we go.
Nice.
Okay, we're seeing it.
Okay.
Excellent.
So, so this presentation, I want to give kudos to Zoe Kasperzik for working with us. This is an all-volunteer group at this point. I'll run through it pretty quickly since I fumbled around quite a bit there. So our main focus is to maximize the opportunities for public open space at this site. And so on the top here, we have the pump station design and the design goals, which we think are great. And we've appreciated the opportunity to work with SBU and presentations they've made on the project. We suggest some additional design recommendations to, like I say, to maximize public access and specifically to reconsider the perimeter fencing, the initial perimeter fencing to maximize public access. Building on what SBU is doing in terms of connecting with the both the natural history and native culture on this site. And also celebrating the marine industrial heritage of the area. We're looking at the broader context. This is partly a recognition that there's limited access to the shoreline between Gasworks Park and the locks. Those two parks, there's Fremont Canal Park and then a series of shoreline street ends in that area. So this really is a unique opportunity. A little bit of Ballard context, where this site fits within that context. You see the parks and greenways and trails in green, educational facilities in blue, and the other public amenities in orange. And then the site itself, and we really think it's important to look at the site as a whole, including the Yankee Diner site. And the adjacent sites. Stimson Marina is looking at plans to redevelop, and they will be required to provide public access. So there's an opportunity to tie that in with what happens on this site. And also to look at the connections from this site to the core of Ballard, to Ballard Avenue, to Market Street, and really make sure that this is really tied into Ballard very well. So final image here is just, again, the SBU proposal that does fence off a large area of landscaping. I do appreciate that they're considering future uses that might make that more public in the future. But we would just suggest that from the get-go, let's move the fence back so that area can be public space, and with the understanding that the uses could evolve over time. And then as we move forward, really make sure that all the decisions that are made don't preclude use of that public open space on the pump station site and the use of the Yankee Diner site as public open space. So with that in a nutshell is what we're about, and we're looking forward to working with the city and trying to realize as much of these opportunities as possible.
Thank you, Dave. What have you done with the city? Where is the interaction with the city? I mean, it seems like most of this all lies in a handful of meetings that need to start happening yesterday between SPU and some of the folks that have gotten involved in this.
Well, SBU has come and Kelsey has presented at a joint meeting of Groundswell and the Friends of Street Ends. And like I said, we participated in their public open house and have spoken about this when it went to the Design Commission. We intend to also comment on it when it goes back to the Design Commission this fall. then, so that's outreach to the city. We also are looking forward to doing more outreach within the neighborhood too, to check in with other stakeholders and get their input on these ideas.
Right, excellent. And I've got questions kind of pouring into that effect. Folks wondering how they get connected to this effort, what they need to do to sort of express their desire about having it happen, about different design ideas. Have you gotten organized to a point where there's a place where people can start connecting around this?
Groundswell has a Facebook page. I'm going to point you to the Groundswell Facebook page, and also to the, I should have put my personal email up here. It's dave.boyd1@comcast.net.
Okay.
And then our Facebook page, we welcome comments there, and just put a comment and some way to reach you, and we'll reach out to you.
Excellent. I certainly know that I've had several personal conversations with people saying, you know, why don't we have something kind of more like the Aqua Verde kind of cantina and kayak club thing that's over in the U District near the hospital over there, near the UW hospital. And folks really would like to see something more active happen down there along the waterfront. You mentioned, but I don't think I understood, what's the relationship between the folks at Stimson Marina? Are they kind of part of this now?
Yeah, they've been a participant in our group, and they do have long-term plans for redevelopment on their property, which will require public access. So they would like to make sure that it's integrated into this. They're very much in support of the idea of a waterfront public space at the Yankee Diner site. They actually built that building years ago and sold it to the owners that sold it to SPU.
Right. Yeah.
One other point I forgot to mention is this has kind of been on our radar screen since the mid-90s when we did our Ballard open space inventory, and one of Groundswell's original founding board members was part of that and pointed out that the Yankee Diner building is directly on access of 24th Avenue Northwest and blocks the view from down 24th Avenue as far up as 75th Street. So opening that view up to the water is important as well.
Yeah. Okay, very much appreciate a quick look at that from you, Dave. I think folks are going to be really interested and excited to keep hearing and seeing more about that moving forward. So I know that Groundswell Northwest has been a very strong and solid member and participant of the Ballard District Council for many years. So really appreciate your taking the helm on a piece that's as central to Ballard as really anything we've talked about in terms of parks and open space. So hopefully we'll at least get you to push the fence back a little bit there, Kelsey. We'll keep trying. And we'll keep the conversation going forward on this, Dave, as much as we can. Thanks for your time. I'm going to shift gears now to another topic, utility related, but not related right to the same project, which is folks from City Light. Jenny Levesque, and some of her colleagues are with us, and I'm going to let her kind of run the show for Seattle City Light.
Great. Thank you very much, Brent. Well, thank you all for your time this evening. We're excited to meet with you and to share information about Seattle City Light's Transportation Electrification Strategic Investment Plan. My name is Jenny Levesque. I'm the External Communications Manager at Seattle City Light. I work in the Communications Division. And I would ask the rest of the Seattle City Light team to go ahead and introduce themselves. Victor?
Hi there, this is Victor Kuto. I'm a program manager here at Seattle City Light.
Hi, this is
Julie, you there?
Yep, and I am a planning analyst at Seattle City Light.
Fantastic. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Victor, if you'd like to kick it off.
For sure, yeah. Thank you all so much for sharing your time with us to learn about a really exciting endeavor that City Light's about to embark on. You'll hear us use the term a lot, transportation electrification here. And I wanted to give you a sense of what it means for Seattle City Light. Transportation electrification really means providing access to the utilities, clean electricity to move people, goods, and services around the greater Seattle area. And you know, this means electrifying things like buses, personal vehicles, rideshare vehicles, as well as medium to heavy duty fleet vehicles for government as well as commercial. And Seattle City Light, as well as the City of Seattle, thinks there's transportation electrification can enable. You know, one of the key benefits is really it can lower transportation pollution. Essentially, you know, electric vehicles or electric motors don't have the need for an exhaust system, so there's no soot or particulate that are being exhausted. So, you know, basically it'll help clean our air, and really communities near industry like diesel industry, as well as major roadways that suffer disproportionately from that particulate are going to really be able to benefit significantly from electric transport. Another benefit is that transportation electrification can help the city meet its climate action goals. 65% of the City of Seattle's greenhouse gas emissions comes from transportation. And so by transitioning to our clean electric fuel, essentially we'll help shrink that footprint. And then lastly, it's going to help bring costs down for customers. Fueling an EV can cost about a third less than a gas vehicle. They have much fewer moving parts, so basically maintenance is much more affordable. And so once the cost of the vehicles come down, really a lot of our customers are going to be able to benefit from this. And then additionally, as the utility gets to sell more power, it helps keep rate pressures down and allows us to keep our affordable rates for everyone. So the reason that we're coming to meet with you and your organization is really we're in the process of developing an transportation electrification strategic investment plan. And this is really going to be the strategic plan behind how we make our investments in electric transport needs for our customers. In September, we're looking to go before City Council to get this plan approved. And really, we've been meeting with community to get a sense as, you know, how our priorities have been laid out and what is most important to community members, so that we can basically form this from, you know, our engagements with the public. Before I get into that list of priorities, I want to give you a little more background on how we got here. And I go to the next slide. And so back in 2017, the city put together Drive Clean Seattle. It's a multi-departmental initiative that basically got the city together to start building these pilots and start getting their hands dirty with this project or this work. Seattle City Light was working on a public EV fast charging stations, a network of stations. And then really the city has been kind of propping up its own plan as to how the city is gonna move forward on transportation electrification. And then in 2019, Seattle City Light completed a study to look at how the utility can put together an investment plan for our own investments. And that basically is to see how the utility can best enable and respond to transportation electrification opportunities. Here on the slide, you're seeing kind of key highlights of what we think the utility can be doing, and that's really preparing for medium and heavy duty fleet electrification, and really kind of getting behind the needs of some of agencies that have some really aggressive plans behind them. So King County Metro has some aggressive plans, as well as Washington State Ferries and the Seattle Port. So being prepared for their needs. Another is really kind of developing new rates and processes that really make sense for transportation electrification. So kind of adjusting our own processes. And then lastly is investing in charging infrastructure that's really emphasized on universal access, as well as expanding coverage and basically filling gaps within our service area. And lastly, this study kind of highlighted the three kind of values that we want to make sure is involved in all of our investments, or most of our investments. One is equity, making sure that basically the benefits of transportation electrification can be enjoyed by all of our customers, as well as those that are underserved. The environment, making sure that our investments are improving air quality and public health. And then lastly, the grid. We want to make sure that our investments are wise investments that don't impact the grid. We want to make sure we're not having to do any upgrades. We're ensuring resiliency and reliability of our grid system. I'm going to go ahead and transition it over to Julie. She's going to tell you a little bit more about this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Victor. So when we did this report and shared with it last year with a number of stakeholders, we got some really important feedback that we needed to prioritize environmental justice community engagement in developing the strategic plan that we're sharing with you today, to make sure that how we're prioritizing and investing in our different transportation uses reflects their wants and needs as communities that have the largest barriers to transportation electrification. And our philosophy throughout this entire community engagement process has been, by meeting and centering with those who have the largest barriers, we'll be able to design solutions that meet the needs of all of our customer owners. So a little bit of background: at the City of Seattle, we define environmental justice communities as those communities who have been most impacted by environmental inequities, including communities of color, immigrants, refugees, people surviving on low incomes, young people, and folks who communicate with limited English proficiency. And really, as a utility, we are committed to working with these communities to increase familiarity with electric vehicles, reduce barriers to access through utility programs, and really maximize benefits and minimize harms. And we've known throughout this process and through that feedback and learning from it that centering equity in ongoing planning efforts is really critical for making sure that we have a successful transformation electrification transition process. So we're addressing this by conducting 2 phases of community engagement. And the first phase, which we're wrapping up right now as we move to deliver our plan to council, is really getting initial input and feedback from community leaders. And that feedback that we were looking for, and now that we've compiled and we're sharing with you today, is what investments and racial equity outcomes should be prioritized by Seattle City Light. And during this process, we also made sure to meet with a number of other stakeholders in the transportation electrification market to be able to understand their perspective as well. And so the second phase of community engagement is going to begin once the plan is approved, knock on wood. And really that engagement is going to be a lot deeper, and it's going to be about specific investments and specific projects. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today is a lot more high level, knowing that that came through a lot of engagement, a lot of perspectives, and then going into the actual specific investments is going to be our next phase. You can go on to the next slide, Victor. I mentioned this a little bit before, but we did talk with community leaders around what are their desired transportation, electrification, racial equity outcomes. And what we mean by outcomes is, what do we want the future to look like? What do we want the future to look like for everyone, for all of our customer owners? And I want to highlight a couple of them here today. And the first is right in the middle: healthy planet and healthy lives. So our goal is to reduce tailpipe emissions that impact local air quality and public health where all of us live, but particularly for our customers that live in the Duwamish Valley and experience disproportionate impacts from poor air quality on their health. And we also want to reduce CO2 emissions that impact us all and have a disproportionate impact on vulnerable populations and communities. And the second is community collaboration. So our goal is that our environmental justice communities, we collaborate with them and they see their wants and needs reflected in our electrification programs, especially the ones that impact specifically their communities. And we found that this is really important for designing public charging siting and design. And then the third is equitable access. We want to make sure that all of our customers, including environmental justice communities, learn about our transportation electrification programs, that they can readily understand and access materials and resources, and that all of our customers see themselves reflected in our materials and communication and can participate in and benefit from our programs. Go ahead to the next slide. And so the last slide that's coming up now is really what are the priorities that came out from this engagement. And I'm going to walk us through these priorities from the top to the bottom. And this is really how it came out, the top as the most important and then bottom as not as important. And the first one is to conduct customer and stakeholder outreach and awareness on transportation electrification. We learned that many of our environmental justice community members are unfamiliar with electric vehicles, and even more so when people are familiar with electric vehicles, the advertising tends to leave out people of color, and it really focuses on white single occupancy vehicle owners. And so community leaders shared that communicating in multiple languages, highlighting of communities of color and their artwork in advertising, and focusing on multimodal transportation electrification can increase equitable access. And this term multimodal, it's not just focusing on cars, it's focusing on buses and trains and all the ways that we all get around in our life. So the second ties in really well to that multimodal point. The number one priority that kept coming up behind education is to prioritize buses for electrification. And this section really encompasses like all of public transit, but the thing that we kept hearing throughout it all was prioritizing buses. So we learned that environmental justice community members are more likely to depend on buses for most, if not all, of their transportation needs. And electrifying public transit will benefit communities who rely on public transit by reducing air and noise pollution where impacts are the greatest for them. And then the third is to electrify commercial, local government, and nonprofit fleets, specifically ones that run through the Duwamish Valley on that I-5 corridor. And really, we've talked about this before in the presentation, but talking about that disproportionate impact of air quality on communities. So the last bucket that came up and is also very important is personal mobility. And I'm just going to touch on two today, the top two. The first is expanding at home and near home charging. 52% of City Lights customers are renters, and the majority of those live in multifamily buildings. And so this at home and near home charging is really finding creative ways to support our customers that live in multifamily locations and don't have access to their own garage or their own parking spot. And then the second is to electrify high mileage vehicles. These vehicles that, you know, drive you around, or the rideshare aspect of driving you around or delivering cars, drive 3 to 5 times more than regular passenger vehicles. And so they can have a really large impact on local air quality. And in addition, these vehicles are frequently driven by communities of color and immigrants. And so targeted investments can support equitable access to transportation electrification. We also heard about accelerating transportation electrification in communities that typically don't have access to the capital to buy cars, and then expanding public fast charging and workplace charging as universal options for charging vehicles. So that was a lot. I'm gonna pause there for the 5 minutes for questions, but we wanted to reiterate that we believe that transportation electrification has the opportunity to benefit all of our customer owners, and we're really excited to bring this plan to council.
With that, thanks, Julie. Brent, we're happy to take any questions that the group may have.
Yeah, thanks very much for all that information. It's obvious that a wealth of work has already gone into your first phase of your strategic planning. A few questions came through to me on our chat bar. First one says, with such strong activism around promoting bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure over vehicle infrastructure, how is City Light engaging with urbanists and advocacy groups who have a lot of energy focus generally against highways and other infrastructure that is more vehicle focused?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, you know, one thing to put this into context is this is, you know, utility investments in grid infrastructure that's going to meet the demand of, you know, our customers wanting to, you know, electrify buses and ferries and commercial fleets, et cetera. And so this is about making those grid investments and being prepared to provide that charging infrastructure. We are also part of a larger collaborative of other city agencies like SDOT and the Office of Sustainability and Environment which are also kind of looking at what are the multimodal opportunities that are available to help electrify, as well as kind of, taking in the input of what the community is really looking for, and being mindful of, we're not here to really kind of create more traffic or promote a mode of transit, but really being prepared to provide that power if it's so desired, so they can really address the climate action objectives as well as the cleaner action objectives. So, we definitely hear a lot of that, and we share that with our peers at the other agencies, and also keep it in mind as we look at infrastructure improvements and how we might be impacting something like that.
Okay, great. Next thing was somebody wanted to know what would be an example of in either Ballard or in North Seattle more generally of community leaders or community groups that City Light did outreach with in the initial phase? Did you talk to anyone here, I guess is the question?
So we focused on community leaders in communities that we defined as environmental justice communities. And so Ballard isn't one of those communities. We spoke with Lake City Collective. So that is an organization that represents North Seattle communities. And we did a lot of engagement with South Seattle communities. But we also met with a number of community-based organizations that may have locations in South Seattle, but have participants that live across the City of Seattle territory and across Seattle City Lights territory. So it's quite possible that those organizations represented residents in Ballard as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thinking a little bit about Duwamish, is there a sense that, does the science say, or do you have a sense that by focusing a lot of this electrification work that Seattle does, that the city takes on, that you can have more than a really sort of very limited marginal effect on air quality issues down there? I think about you, because you mentioned I-5 several times. I'm thinking, well, I-5 is such a big corridor of so much travel. I don't see how we could really, at a really local municipal level, affect that greatly in terms of broad externalities on the community on there.
Yeah, we can look at opportunities where we're focused on some key customers. King County Metro is an example. We are working with King County Metro and looking at their south base that's operating out of Tukwila, there in the Duwamish Valley, and really their bus fleet is operating out of that south base is what they're focused on right now in electrifying. And so being prepared to serve them as a customer and meet their needs, I think will have a huge impact in that area. But there's other key customers in that area that we can be supportive of to help them move that electrification effort forward, such as Recology is one of them. So they operate their fleets out of the Duwamish Valley area. And so focusing in that way on some of the bases that operate out of there will help. And then also thinking about transport corridors as well. So, working on a fast charging station in Tukwila right off of I-5. Sure, it's not going to address all the vehicles going down it, but we're starting to work on that. And the same thing for medium to heavy duty fleet vehicles. So
you can have some real effects on local sort of hotspots, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, and is to the issue of Metro in the county, I think that's the big player in so much of this. What, are they hand-in-hand partners with you on this? What's the relationship? How's it being managed in terms of their electrification? Because the buses are so central to what might or might not be achieved, I would think, here, at least in a really urban municipal level.
Yeah, King County Metro has really been a champion and a leader in this, and have released their own electrification plans. I believe it's by next year they're looking to have 140 battery electric buses operating out of the south base, and then they have another tier of adjustments that they're planning to do. So next year they have, I think it's 80, and then 40. It might be flipped the other way. But there's some tiered steps that they're looking to take.
And long term, are they talking about trying to convert a much bigger proportion of their fleet to electric? Or
exactly, yeah.
Yes.
I would hope and think so. One question that came was whether part of this conversation has to do with increasing the amount of sort of microbusing and more hyper local routing stuff that could be done. And it kind of, I guess, is between, you know, plugging in your car and having to catch a giant bus, is somewhere in between trying to catch an electric ride of some kind.
So we did hear through community engagement the desire to have some, you know, when people talk to us, we are Seattle City Light, but we are the city to everyone else. And so there's been the desire for more like last mile options to public transit and having those last mile options be electric. And so, you know, we've captured that feedback and we're looking forward to continuing working with our Metro partners to find opportunities. Yeah,
that's great. I think you obviously it's going to take a long time to change some of this stuff over, but and the more we can do, it's pretty obvious how beneficial it is. And a lot of ways, bottom line, a lot of folks are providing that kind of input and saying they appreciate the focus on reducing negative impacts to areas industrial and in the Duwamish. Yeah, I think that's about all the questions I can kind of delve out of here right now. It's obviously a long-term process that we're all going to benefit from. So when we get there, it'll be better. Kind of like a lot of things, transportation around here in Ballard and elsewhere. Really appreciate your time. Obviously, this is, I guess, the first piece, and we'll probably hear back from you when you start moving towards some of the more specific things. I think we have the perspective that hearing from historically underheard from communities is really important, but I think we also have the perspective that we don't want to get left out of the conversation, even in places like Ballard. You know, we're one of the fastest growing neighborhoods in the country. So hopefully we can continue to have a relationship with you and talk about some of these issues.
Yeah, and we'd like to reiterate that if anybody watching this has any comments or feedback, please do share it with us. It, you know, may not be incorporated into the plan because we're delivering that very soon, but it's really great to know for our next phase of community engagement and the actual specific investments. So please do share those.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all. See if I can go back to the main screen here. I'm not sure if everyone's still hanging around or not. Look at it, everybody's hung around watching each other's presentations. Very good, class. I want to thank all of you very much. Obviously, we crammed a lot into an hour and a half. There's more conversation, as I've said, after each of you have kind of given us some of what you're working on. Big things in process here in Ballard and Seattle. So we'll look forward to talking more about it. Just please keep in touch with the Ballard District Council. We've done, I think, a pretty yeoman job of making the leap from City of Seattle supported city neighborhood council district council group to being our own nonprofit and community organization. And we're really determined to keep trying to provide the umbrella role that gives nonprofits and community groups and business organizations an opportunity to get that network to happen across Ballard and Crown Hill. When you add us all up, we're a pretty big part of the city's population, and so we are looking for opportunities to continue to kind of, you know, like I say, maintain this network of folks as a nonprofit organization, kind of really building a bridge to the city and to each other. So thank you all very much for joining us. We will be in touch with all the folks who light on our listserv or on Facebook or Twitter or Nextdoor or our website to talk about what we have coming in the next few months. We've already been talking with our candidates for the House, the Washington representative seat that's vacant here. So we'll be trying to do a candidate forum here probably in October and looking at a couple of different ways we could go with our September meetings. So with that, I'm just going to thank everyone who was there tonight from SPU and CLC Light and Dave Boyd on his own. And we'll just say goodnight, and we'll look forward to seeing you all later in the fall. Please, all of you, stay healthy, take care of yourself and of your community as we try and get past this pandemic. Good night.
Night.